All right, here we go. Michael Franzese, welcome back to VladTV.
Back again, Vlad.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years.
Has been.
Yeah.
You don't look any older?
You neither. And I just found out you're 70 years old?
71.
71 years old?
Yes.
What's the secret? What's the secret? I gotta know.
Leave the mob. No. Well, listen, my dad was 103 when he passed away, so DNA has something to do with it, and then just live a clean life.
Yeah. No drinking, no smoking.
No smoking, no drinking. Don't gain too much weight. That's important.
Yep.
And, do the right thing.
There we go. There we go. Well, before we start, you actually have a new book.
I do.
Mafia Democracy: How Our Republic Became a Mob Racket. Okay, we went through this, and essentially you're comparing what the government does to what the mob has been doing, only better. You're saying that the American government actually does a better job of it.
Well, they do a better job because they have better resources and they make the laws. But yeah, Vlad, I noticed a long time ago how Machiavellian this government is now becoming. And, look, I wrote the book. We can get into it in great detail and let people read the book. But, just to enlighten people and let them understand what's really going on and how dangerous it is for, all of us people here that put these politicians in office, that lie to us and do the opposite of what we send them to Washington and to the state offices to do. And, from the comments that I'm getting, the book hit the bestseller list. From the comments that I'm getting, people are getting it. They're understanding it. And that's why I wrote the book. We got to make some changes.
Well, you talked about lobbying, right?
Yes.
When a company gives money to Congress, it's lobbying, but really it's a bribe.
Absolutely. It's a bribe. They get perks in exchange. And the lobbyists are lobbying for a company to get policies written in their favor, so that they can go out and make more money. And then, the irony is then the politicians get on to the same companies that they helped make more money and start complaining that they're not paying enough taxes. And it's all a show. It's a show for the people. It means nothing. But, another thing, Vlad, how do they explain that, most politicians are elected in office and they have blue-collar assets, blue-collar net worth, and they come out multimillionaires, on a $175,000, $200,000 salary a year. How do they come out multimillionaires?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways. I mean, one of the ways is that at one point, politicians can actually buy stock ahead of a vote, knowing which way the vote is going to go. And I remember 60 Minutes did a whole special exposing that. So they shut it down, but they just slightly changed the laws where family could still do the same thing. So all they really got to do is just have their wives or their kids basically buy the same stocks, and it's now perfectly legal.
Yeah.
And, anywhere else that would be insider trading.
Exactly.
You would go to jail for it.
Exactly. We would go to jail for it.
Right, exactly.
In Nancy Pelosi case, she allows her husband to go out and buy the stock, and she became, her net worth is $400 or $500 million, something like that. It's been reported ever since she came into office. So, this happens a lot, and people don't know it. They don't get it. They don't understand it. But, it's all about lobbying, special interests, the regulations that they make that, hurt small businesses but benefit, corporate America and benefits our politicians. And the book, we go into great detail in all of this. And like I said, people are getting it because we're seeing the comments and they're appreciative of it. And my whole goal in this book was to enlighten people and get them to hold our public officials accountable. Bottom line.
Well, you've also, in the book, talked about how the unions is an example of how the government is becoming a mafia democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you yourself involved in the unions during your heyday?
Yes.
Explain how you were involved.
Well, I had control of a local that had bartenders and waitresses. I also had the security guards union. Security guard union that we had, I don't know if you know this, but we had people stationed at some nuclear power plants, 9 of them altogether. And the law at that time, I don't know if it's changed, is that when a nuclear power plant closes down, you have to have security around it for 100 years. 100 years, even though it's closed down. And so the mob was protecting the nuclear power plants that we had because we control the unions. Waitresses and bartenders, I had control of those unions because, we installed the delegates in there. We installed the president of the union. And basically, we used it as a tool. You go into a restaurant, hey, you want the union? No? Okay, we're going to pick it, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, you can pay us 25 grand every Christmas. We'll leave you alone. And so we use the unions in that way. And then, even if we didn't control the union, our other, associates did, and we made deals with them construction-wise and every other way so that, we can use the unions again to make money off of contractors like Trump and all the big ones, Helmsley. So people say all the time, was Trump involved with the mob? Every major contractor was involved with the mob. They had to be. Every developer, every real estate guy, but not to the point where he sat down with us and, we controlled him in any way.
Okay, so how do you compare that to what the government's doing with the unions?
Well, again, it's money. When they cater to the unions have a huge voting block for them. And they also have huge pension funds that they contribute at the time of campaigning, and they basically buy votes by giving the unions favors. That's what they do. Because, again, there's power in numbers. And these unions have big membership. And they also have big money. And they support that candidate. And in return, the candidate has to do their bidding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of unions at all. I kind of feel like it artificially creates, an environment that doesn't really promote good business. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, you look at like the teachers union, and it's almost impossible to get fired as a teacher if you're in the union. So what do? They just move them into the lower income neighborhoods. So then you have these lower income neighborhoods that are already struggling with the worst teachers in the area that are creating even worse students, creating high dropout rates. So it's almost like sometimes you could almost say that the schools are creating the bad neighborhoods. You see what I'm saying? As opposed to like, this is just a shitty teacher. Get rid of him or her.
Exactly.
And that's that.
But it's not easy. They can't get rid of him. So
exactly.
Easy. And let me ask you another question. Why do government workers need a union? Who are they protecting themselves against? The government? I mean, it's the biggest scam in the world. I mean,
You're right.
The government is not supposed to be taking advantage of people that work for them, but they have a union to protect them against their employers, and their employers happen to be the government.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as someone who has close to 20 employees now, I fully support worker rights. I feel that there are certain laws that you have to follow, which we do, and so forth. But to bring in another entity on top of that, I feel is just ridiculous.
I agree.
Yep. Well, you were actually portrayed in the movie Goodfellas, one of the iconic films of our lifetime. Ray Liotta just passed, who played Henry Hill. Did you ever know Ray Liotta at all?
I met him once briefly. So no, I don't know him, but I know people that knew him fairly well and always had nice things to say about him. And my first introduction to Ray Liotta was in the movie Goodfellas. And at first, when I saw it, I said, no, he doesn't fit the part, because I knew Henry Hill really well. Okay. And he did not portray Henry as Henry really was. He made him look a lot better. I mean, Henry never looked so good as Ray Liotta made him look. But then as I got into the movie, started to forget Henry and just concentrate on Ray, he was terrific. He played a great part.
So Henry Hill, what crew was he with?
He was with Paulie Vario, Lucchese's.
Lucchese.
Yeah.
Lucchese Mafia. And he eventually ended up working with the feds.
Yes.
Were you around when he ended up turning?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I met Henry early on when he was doing the Boston scandal, with the, I forget the guy's name, the college, Boston College. But he was giving me some inside information. So I made some money with him because he used to hang out in Long Island also. And then, when that whole thing happened, we happened to have the same prosecutor, Ed McDonald, who flipped Henry, was my prosecutor in the Eastern District. So, but I mean, I knew Henry. I knew Jimmy Burke very well. Paulie Vario I knew well. So I knew all those guys. That's why they put me in Goodfellas. It wasn't my crew. I had nothing really to do with them business-wise. But I asked Pileggi later on, I says, why did you put me in there? He said, well, Mike, you had name value. You knew people, so we just threw your name in there.
Okay. I mean, when he flipped and started working with the feds, how much damage did that create?
Well, a lot. I mean, I don't know if everything Henry said was, on point. I don't know how involved he really was. I'll be honest with you, Val. I don't, Vlad. I don't think he could have been that involved because Henry, he was an alcoholic. He had a drug problem from early on. You know, I'll tell you one incident. I was in a club out in Long Island. I walked into the restroom, and I saw 4 feet in one of the stalls. Now, you didn't see that back then, right? I said, what's going on here? So I kicked open the door, and it was Henry Hill and my brother. My brother had a drug problem. They were doing coke. So I pulled him out, and, and got upset with my brother. But I told Henry, the word was out. I said, Henry, the word is out on you. If Paulie knows this is going on, you're going to get killed. Now, I'm not going to tell him, but I don't want to see you in this place ever again, and I want to see you next to my brother. And that was an encounter I had when he left, and that was it. So he had a drug problem. I don't think he was as involved as they claim he was.
Well, yeah. I mean, he testified against everyone, and they put him in the witness protection program, but then he got kicked out of the program, essentially.
Yeah. Another incident, I've mentioned this before, I was in Terminal Island when I was doing my time. And Henry was obviously on separation. He was in jail at that time. And, they separate him from other people, but they put him in Terminal Island by mistake. And I noticed him coming out of the cafeteria. And he PC'd up at that point because the lieutenant called me in. He must have seen me and got nervous because, he should have. And then they shipped him out. But it was a mistake by the Bureau of Prisons.
I mean, how often do people who cooperate end up getting killed by the mafia? I mean, it happened with Whitey Bulger, of course. Mm-hmm. You know about that, and that's very high profile.
Yes.
But as a whole, how often does it actually happen?
Well, I don't know of anybody, I never heard of anybody that went into the program that ever got killed afterwards.
You mean witness protection?
Witness protection program, yeah.
But I mean, not everyone goes into witness protection.
No. Well, listen, Vlad, if you're suspected of being an informant on the street, you're going to go. I mean, there's no question. So if you don't get to the point where you're already cooperating and already protected by the government, and we find out about it, you're going to go, no doubt.
How many people do you know outside of Whitey Bulger who actually got killed after they took the stand and basically told on a bunch of people?
After they took the stand, I can't think of anybody. One guy that we found out was an informant and got killed before was Willie Boy Johnson. He was in Gotti's crew, somebody that I worked with. I was shy like a money with him. But I don't know of anybody that took the stand and then got killed afterwards. At least it doesn't come to, my mind right away. Is
it because it's more high profile and they feel like the feds are watching them? Because, I mean, I don't think the feds, if you're not in witness protection, I don't care. Doesn't seem like the feds really give a shit what happens to you after that, do they?
No. They don't care. Yeah. But normally, if you take the stand, you're in WITSEC. They're protecting you. So nothing's going to happen at that point.
Yeah, well, but then a lot of people leave witness protection.
They do, but they don't come back to New York, and they don't hang out here. I mean, hang out where they shouldn't hang out. But I'm going to be honest with you too. Now there's some guys on the street that I know are in the witness protection program that are living in New York, and I'm kind of scratching my head. But I'll tell you this, back in the 70s and 80s, during my time, they wouldn't be walking around, no doubt. So there's been some changes in that life for sure.
So, for example, like in the hip-hop world, there's a really prominent guy named Alpo Martinez. He killed this guy named Rich Porter. There was a movie made out of it called Paid in Full. And then he went to D.C. and just went on a bloodbath, ended up killing tons of people with this other guy. He testified against the guy and got I think 20 years or something like that for being involved in all those murders. He gets out. He was in witness protection in Maine and basically stayed out there for a couple of years and then just got bored with it. And then just next thing you know, he moves back to Harlem. He's on social media. He's like a little local celebrity, ends up getting killed in Harlem. It was sort of this unrelated situation. Like it was like a road rage thing and so forth, but it's still like he's hanging out in the place where he's had people killed, he's ripped people off. And it was like everyone was like, this is crazy. Like, why is this guy? But it seems like a lot of these guys, they want that fame, that street fame. They can't really just be, Mark Johnson in Maine and, living that quiet life.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like My Blue Heaven, that comedy, when the guy's in a program and he can't survive like that. He's not used to it.
Steve
it's
Martin,
too hard.
Was it?
Huh?
Was it Steve Martin?
Yeah, Steve Martin.
Movie? Yeah, I remember.
It was funny.
That.
He was great. I was his best role, I think, Steve Martin. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. When you're a part of that life, it's tough to give it up.
Well, were you ever in witness protection?
No.
Okay. And that's because you took a plea deal, but you didn't actually testify against anybody.
Exactly. You know, I'm glad you asked me this. I want to clear this up. It's better I do it on your channel than, you know, I've said this a million times. I definitely spoke with the feds, no question about it. But I did it in such a way, look, you know, I can manipulate things. I did it in such a way where I knew nobody was going to go to prison. Nobody ever went to prison as a result of anything I ever told the feds. As a matter of fact, you know, at my parole hearing, the AUSA said it in open court. He said, Franzese never gave us anything of value and violated my parole. The one guy that they said went to jail because of information that I gave, not that I testified against him, Frankie Campione is called. He's caught on tape. He's caught on tape arguing with some guys because some guy is saying to him, another mob guy, I should be killed, meaning me. And he turns around to the guy on tape and says, who did Franzese ever hurt? Now, that's the guy I allegedly gave information and put him in jail. It's all nonsense. People just say these things, you know? But look, Vlad, I can tell you this. I looked for a way out of that life because I saw how destructive it was. I was indicted 7 times. I knew that the next time I went down, if I go down, I'm going away for 100 years, forever. Guys were flipping left and right. And I said, hey, this is the way to make my exit. If I can do it now and preserve the life of my family. But I never hurt anybody. Nobody ever went to prison. I testified in a Senate hearing. Senate hearings are nothing but a dog and pony show. Nobody gets charged. Nobody gets indicted. Nobody goes to jail. And it was about gambling and boxing or something like that. It was all nonsense. So, but people say things and they want to put a tag on you and all of that. But, that's what I just told you. Those are the facts.
Well, but you did break the code.
100%.
Yeah. And isn't that when you sign up for the code, don't they say that violating this code is punishable by death?
Absolutely.
So technically, you could be sentenced to death just by breaking the code.
Well, I was sentenced to death. There was 100%.
Right.
Persico was my former boss, very upset when I walked away. And yeah, contract on my life. You know the story. My dad went along with it. He didn't order it, but he went along with it. But let me tell you what Omerta is. Omerta means one thing: silence. You're never supposed to even admit that the life exists. You don't admit that there's a life, and you don't betray it. Betray it how? By talking about it, walking away. Some people think that when you take that oath, that you're taking an oath to lie, steal, and kill. That's not what the oath is. The oath is you never even admit to the existence of the mafia. So obviously, I betrayed it.
Right. And Vic Arena put a hit out on you?
Well, no, it was actually Persico. Persico is still the boss. Vic Arena never became the boss. He tried to become the boss.
Okay. And
the family went to war. But, Vic and I, we got along, but, we weren't crazy about each other. Let's put it that way.
Well, speaking of Carmine the Snake Persico, when I speak to a lot of the ex-mob guys, they really put him at the top of the food chain in terms of like, okay, this is a hardcore gangster. He lived by the rules. He, never cooperated. He never informed. He stood tall the whole time. But since our last interview, reports came out that he was actually an informant.
I don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
No. His
lawyer said it wasn't true.
I don't believe it. Look, the guy did, most of the time that he was my boss, he was in prison. He got a 12-year sentence. Then he goes to trial. He gets a 39-year sentence. And then he gets convicted by Giuliani and gets a 100-year sentence. If he was an informant, he was the worst informant in history because he never did anything to benefit himself. I don't believe it. I knew Junior very well. And to me, he was a stand-up guy all the way. I could never see him cooperating. I don't believe it.
He was also a psychopath.
Well, look, he was a tough guy.
Well, for example, right, as you know, I just interviewed Sammy The Bull.
Mm-hmm. Sammy
goes into this detail when at one point, because that was his boss at one point as well, right?
Timing-wise, I don't know if Junior was, the time that Sammy was with our family, with the Colombos, I don't know if, it might have been Junior in charge, yeah, right after Colombo, yeah.
Sammy said that Carmine sent him on a mission to go hurt this guy. And he said to bring him back an ear. You heard this story before?
Yeah.
He said, I want you to bring back his ear. And Sammy was like, how the hell am I going to cut off someone's ear in the process of doing this? And he goes to this whole story about how, I guess he attacked the guy with like a spade or something, like the big metal ball. And then he ended up like, I guess like cutting his finger off as he was beating him. And he was trying to find the finger because if he couldn't find the ear, he figured the finger might be like a consolation prize. But then like the guy's co-workers started to show up and there was too much danger. So he ran off without finding the finger. And I guess like when he went back to Carmine had already heard the whole story. He laughed about it because, you're a funny guy. You know, don't worry about it. That's good enough. But I mean, the fact that you're asking someone to bring back an ear, like an ear?
Well, listen, being a psychopath and being an informant are two different things. Now, Junior was, he was treacherous in his own way. He was a real tough guy. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't relate to being an informant. I don't believe the informant part.
Okay, what about the psychopath part?
I didn't see him that way, but I knew he was a tough guy. I mean, look, they called him the Snake. He had a reputation. You know, it goes way back. And, he was a guy you don't mess with. He was a small guy. He wasn't big. You know, I think he was 5'8", 5'9", Persico. But he was a tough guy. He was one of the real ones, no doubt about it. But I didn't see him as a psychopath.
Okay.
Sammy had a different experience. I didn't see him that way. He liked me a lot, and I liked him.
Well, Carmine Persico actually approved your whole gas scam.
He did. Yeah, he did. Well, listen, when I first sat down with him, when I realized what I had, I went to see him. And I said, Junior, I'm going to show you more money than you ever saw before. And he immediately said, we don't get involved in drugs. I said, Junior, it's not drugs. It's gas. And I explained it to him. And I said, but here's the deal. When this gets out on the street, everybody's going to want a piece. No doubt about it. I said, we can't let that happen because we're going to blow it. I said, so you got to make me win every argument. You got to make me win every sit down. No politics being played. You do that and I'll make you wealthy. And he said, show me. And I showed him. And I never lost an argument in the gas business. Junior backed me, supported me all the way. And if it wasn't him, whoever he sent with me before he made me a captain, they backed me fully. But I was bringing him a lot of money.
Like how much money did you kick up?
$2 million at one point a week.
$2 million a week?
Yeah.
You were kicking that up?
Yeah.
Which meant that you were making how much?
We were bringing in $8 to $10 million a week at the height of the operation. $8 to $10 million. Selling 500 million gallons of gas a month, taking down 30 to 40 cents a gallon, depending upon what deal we made. It's a lot of money.
How are you laundering all that money?
Wasn't easy.
I bet.
we had a lot of cash in the beginning, and then when we switched over and we were collecting money through wires and everything. I had money in foreign accounts. We were moving it right out of the country.
I mean, how do you actually move that much money out of the country?
Well, we had several different banks. It was an elaborate scheme. I had, I had two good accountants that worked it out for me, and it was a good system.
I mean, back then, Switzerland, you could actually hide your money there, and it was actually safe. It's not like now where basically Switzerland had to basically cough up all their accounts or else
Correct.
not. But I remember that was a big deal where I forgot, was it Credit Suisse? Or something like
Credit Suisse, yeah.
Swiss, yeah, the big Swiss bank. Basically, America announced that unless they, exposed all the American accounts, that they were going to shut down all their U.S. operations. Yeah. So they exposed all the U.S. accounts.
They did that, and then we had a lot of money in Austria too. We had Austrian banks there. But, as part of my plea deal, I had to give up an account. My partner, who became an informant, and myself, we had a numbered account. We each had half the number. And I had to give up my half when he told the government about it. But the government went to Austria and said, this is mob money, because he had given him the half of the account. And they said, this is mob money. We want you to release it to us. And Austria said, no way. We don't care who you are. You bring us the full account, we'll release it. So as part of my plea deal, I had to give up my half because I was never going to get it. And that's how they got the money.
How much did they get?
It's about $33 million.
$33 million.
Yeah.
And half of that was yours?
Yes. That was just the federal tax money. We were putting it away, he and I. It's too bad. Because, when he became an informant against me, I said to him, I told his son, I said, listen, He's going to become an informant. We'll fight him in court, but don't let him give up the bank account. That's ours. Feds don't know about it. Hold on to it, you know, and we'll still split it up later, even if I go to jail. But you know, he was. They were going to throw him out of the program, so he gave up the account and everything else.
$16.5 million gone, just like that. I mean, granted, it wasn't exactly your money. I mean, you stole it, but still, you had it. Possession is 9/10 of the law, and Austria wasn't going to give it up. So, $16.5 million in cash. Yeah. Wow, did that hurt?
Yeah, it hurt. Yes, hurts more now.
Well, Giuliani was one of the guys that prosecuted you, right?
Yes,
and he actually wrote the foreword to your book.
He did.
How did that work out?
You know, a mutual friend or acquaintance that has a radio show, Joe Pagliarulo, he was close with Rudy, and he had us both on. Rudy agreed to go on his radio show. And Rudy said, it's the first time I spoke to him, seen him or anything in 30-some-odd years. You know, last time I saw him was in a courtroom. And, you know, after that, I mean, it was a nice session. And then publisher asked him to write the foreword, and he wrote an amazing foreword. He really did. So he said he's been watching me for 25 years, and he believes that the transformation is real. And that's why he wrote the foreword.
I mean, you guys were arch enemies at one point.
Rudy told my lawyer the day of my arraignment, and he remembered this, that if he convicted me, he was going to give me double what my father got. My father got 50, so he was going to give me 100 years. And that's the kind of time, you know that, they were giving the guys at that point in time. So if I lose that case, I'm history. I'm done.
Right. But you ended up beating the case.
I beat the case, yeah.
I mean, was there a certain level of anger on his end for losing that case?
Well, it was 15 of us. 7 of us, I believe, got acquitted, and the other 8 got convicted. So he did get partial victory. But, you know, myself and Jimmy Rotunda, we were the main defendants. We were the ones, and he wanted to convict us. We both got acquitted. So, in a way, it was a loss for him.
Okay. The two of you ever actually meet up, or he just did the foreword? And...
No, we didn't. We haven't met yet. I think we will in the future, but he was also involved, I think, you know, I don't know if you spoke about it with Sammy, in the Mafia States of America sit down that Sammy and I
no,
had.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, they interviewed him afterwards, so I'm sure we'll meet up.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting how the guy who went after the mob so strongly at the tail end of his life ended up defending Donald Trump. Not very well, mind you. You know, I mean, would actually get up and support some of these like ridiculous statements. And once it got to court, he knew that he couldn't actually lie in court. So he had to say, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, and so forth. And it's almost like he flipped in a way. You know what I mean? Like he went from...
Yeah. Well, listen, you know, I didn't follow that too closely, honestly. But I think Rudy's getting a bad rap on some stuff, too, because the hatred of Trump obviously goes on everyone, you know?
Yeah.
Look, Paul Manafort is a friend of mine. What they did to that guy was terrible. I mean, and all because he was a Trump ally, you know? I think a lot of this is coming out now, you know, without getting too political on this. A lot of it is coming out what really happened with Trump and that whole Russian nonsense. Mm-hmm. And it was nonsense, and I think we can state that positively right now. The evidence is there, the proof is there. So anybody associated with Trump is going to, you know, get that black mark or that blemish against him, and Rudy was one of them.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And in the book, didn't you say that you fixed fights?
Well, listen, you know, there were fights when we knew the outcome. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Let me tell you, any professional sport that has two people against one another, it's easy to fix. If you can get to the person, it's easy to fix. Tennis, the same thing. Boxing, obviously, we love boxing. It was big with us. And yeah, I mean, we knew the outcome. That was the game at that time. You know, you went into a bout knowing who was going to win, who was going to lose. You bet that way, and that was it.
Okay, were these like world championship fights?
You know, it's always best to take the fights that have less eyes on them. You know, even in professional sports, people have said to me, Michael, is the Super Bowl fixed? Why are you going to fix to try to compromise the outcome of the Super Bowl when hundreds of millions of people are looking at it? The security around it is more. You can make the same amount of money on, you know, 3 weeks prior to that in a normal game, and nobody's really looking or paying attention. So, you know, everybody looks at the Muhammad Ali Sonny Liston fight. I never heard that fight was fixed from anybody on our side. Now whether there was something else going on there with Liston, I don't know. I mean, I heard.
Well, Liston, wasn't he working for the mob? Wasn't he like an enforcer, like breaking people's legs and arms and so forth?
I'm going to be, again, I was younger then, but close with my dad, and we spoke about it. He never indicated to me that was a fixed fight.
Okay.
Seemed like it was, but if it was, I don't think it was from us.
Well, the fights that you guys did fix, can you say any of the people?
No.
Okay, fair enough. How would it usually work, though? Can you talk about an instance without naming a name of how you actually got to one of the fighters and agreed, they agreed to actually, either, I guess, lose the fight, right?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of fighters that we knew. We were close and we supported, and, we paid for their training, and they were obligated to us. So, listen, you want a championship bout? We got to make some money first. You're going to take a dive in the 4th or the 5th round. And they do it. It's that simple, believe it or not.
That simple.
Yeah. And it depends on the fighter. I mean, there's some fighters that, but if they're obligated to us from day one, if we groom them, if we put them in that position, they're going to do it.
How often do they just switch their mind when they say, something? Fuck this. I don't care what the repercussions are. I'm not going to lose this fight, even though I agreed to it.
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Yes. Because then their fight isn't in the ring. It's outside of the ring, and they don't want that.
They don't want that. Okay. Well, since our last interview, you and Sammy the Bull had a sit down on Valuetainment.
Yes.
I actually watched all 10 episodes.
Did you?
Yep. I went through everything, mostly focusing on your parts. But it got interesting. I mean, number one, why did you decide to actually do this? Because up until this point, when have you actually been face-to-face with Sammy the Bull?
Really never. I mean, I had one encounter with him. I'm not going to get into that because he remembers it differently, and there's no sense in going over it. But I didn't know him on the street. We didn't do business together. We didn't have any relationship like that. I knew John better. Well, I didn't know Sammy, so I knew Gotti. But whenever I was in Gotti's presence over whatever the issue was, Sammy was not present. So, Patrick got in touch with us, and he kind of romanced us to put this thing together. And that's how it happened.
Okay. Right. And it's not actually on YouTube. You actually have to purchase it. It's like $40.
Correct.
Which I did. So you guys got some of my money.
All right.
So you guys agreed to do it. It seemed like there were 2 armed guards in the room. Were you guys like frisked for weapons and the such ahead of time, or?
Yeah, they wanted to make sure. I mean, Patrick wanted to keep control. He didn't want it to get out of hand. I think, listen, I'm normally a pretty calm guy. I didn't say much, but Sammy might have, made some statements. And again, I don't know, that said, Patrick better have some security there. I mean, that's what it was like.
Well, at one point, an argument actually did happen between the two of you. What exactly led up? And it was really mostly Sammy. Sammy was the one that started to get more loud and so forth. You weren't backing down, but it seemed like he was more the aggressor in the situation. That seemed like more of his personality anyways.
Correct.
So what led up to the actual argument?
It was, Sammy trying to say that I cooperated. And I did cooperate. I did speak to the feds, but I didn't put anybody in jail. And for some reason, not only Sammy, but guys on the street who have cooperated, and this is public knowledge, like to make sure that people know that I cooperated in that regard. And I said, listen, I spoke to the feds. I had a plan, but I didn't put anybody in jail. To me, that's the bottom line. Don't put anybody in prison. Nobody ever went to prison as a result of anything I said. And that's what I've said all along. But, people take issue with it. Sammy took issue with it at that time, and he was... he got a little riled up about it, which, listen, if that's his feeling, that's his feeling, And if you notice, I didn't really come back at him with respect to what he might have done because I didn't see any value in that, But listen, I'm used to that, Vlad. A lot of people take shots at me, on the online. I mean, that's the nature of social media. You can take shots at people, and if you respond to it, all it does is elongate this thing, So I don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, at one point when you guys were arguing, Sammy said, "Don't point your finger at me. I'll break your fucking face. I'll fucking eat you alive."
Yes. And I got up and said, "Hey, you're not the underboss anymore,
What does that mean?
Well, he was acting like he was the underboss at that point in time,
And he was an underboss at one point.
Yeah, but he wasn't at that meeting, I mean,
Right.
and nor was I a capo regime at that point. So, listen, Sammy is, he's an emotional type of guy. And I want to make this clear. He and I have become good friends. I happen to like Sammy now, and I think he likes me. We may do some other things together. Vlad, whatever happened way back when, Sammy did what he did for his reasons. I did what I did for my reasons, but it's in the past, And we have talked about it. We say, look, we're both, Cosa Nostra, Sammy. And because we're out of it, we still have a mentality in a way that you and I shouldn't be at odds. And he said the same thing. And so we patched it up. Look, the guy's trying to change his life around. He's done a job, but, he's had some health issues, but he's done a great job. His family loves him. I always measure that, His son Gerard's a great kid. I met Karen once, and I saw her on that ABC special, and I really felt for her, the way she talked about growing up with her dad. So he's got a good family, and he's trying to do the right thing. And he's 75 years old, So he and I, we've patched things up, and we're friends.
Okay, so let me ask you about the mafia structure real quick, because at the top you have the boss, and then you have the underboss below, but then sort of in between you have the consigliere.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between a consigliere and an underboss?
Well, official positions, the consigliere is supposed to be an advisor to the boss, and he's also an intermediary between the soldiers, the capos, and the boss, because you're not really supposed to go directly to the boss if you're a soldier. Let's say you have a complaint, you have a gripe, you have something bothering you. You go to a consigliere, you let him know. Maybe you got a problem with the boss, whatever. He's supposed to be your intermediary to straighten it out. The only problem is the consigliere is handpicked by the boss. And if you go to the consigliere with a complaint about the boss, you're going to be in trouble. So you don't do that. But he's an advisory position. The underboss is actually the second in command in rank. So Sammy was second in command. I believe if the boss had a meeting that he couldn't attend or he wanted to send, he would send Sammy. He would send the underboss to represent the family at that point in time.
Well, I guess I don't understand then at that point, what's the difference between the underboss and the consigliere still? Because they both report to the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Both people could go to them with issues.
Correct.
So is the consigliere, is it just more of a kind of the way they carry themselves? This is more like the calm person who could see both sides, but because it almost, I mean, I look at the structure of my business. It's like, I have me at the top and I have my managers, and my managers deal with my employees. I mean, I could have another person on the side, I guess, but technically if there's a problem, you usually go to their manager and the manager comes to me. And this other person, I'm not quite sure how to even, if I had a consigliere, I wouldn't quite know how to fit them into my organization.
Well, let's make a comparison. You got the president and the vice president.
Right.
If something would happen to the president, the next in command who would take over would be the VP.
Right.
Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be like that in Cosa Nostra, but most likely it would be. He would be the next in charge. So he outranks the consigliere.
Okay. But the consigliere only answers to the boss.
Correct.
So could the underboss tell the consigliere what to do?
He can, yeah. He can, yes.
Okay.
He can. And when you come into that life, we're told everybody's equal. Soldier's equal to the boss as far as policies and everything. In other words, the boss is not supposed to do anything to a soldier in violation of Cosa Nostra policy. So in that way, we're all equal. But obviously, you have a boss and they outrank you. And a capo regime is a street boss because the boss appoints men underneath you, soldiers underneath you. So, people have said, Michael, you're not a boss. I said, I never called myself a boss, but a capo regime is a street boss. You're assigned men. You are their immediate supervisor. So in a way, you are a boss. You're not the boss, but you are a boss in an organization. That's how it goes.
I mean, when you look at the five families, how often have the bosses actually cooperated?
Well, Joey Messina,
Okay. And he was head of the what?
He was Bonanno family.
Bonanno.
Was stunning when because I knew Joey. I don't know about anybody else. I'm trying to think. Bosses? I don't know of any other boss in recent memory that has cooperated.
Were there any bosses who got killed because people thought they were cooperating?
No, not that I know of.
So basically, you're saying that once you're at the boss level, you really don't cooperate, and if you get pinched, you do your time most times. Because
Well,
a lot
listen,
of bosses were in prison
yes. Well, let's
for
put it,
long periods of time, 30 years, 50 years.
yes. But let's put it this way. There's one thing that I have to explain. A lot of people think that the younger guys couldn't stand up like the older guys. And I say that that's not true. The older guys didn't face what current mafia is facing.
There's no
They didn't have the
back then.
racketeering laws. They didn't have the Bail Reform Act. They didn't have the Sentencing Reform Act. They didn't have any of that to deal with. It's one thing, way back when, 50s, 60s, you got, a 10-year sentence. You did 3 or 4 or 5. You got 20, you did 7 or 8. Anybody could stand up under that. But now under the RICO statute, you get 50 and you're doing 50. You're doing 85% of your time. You're going to do 40 plus years. That's different. People don't stand up. I don't care who you are. Boss, underboss, or whatever. A lot of the older guys, maybe not necessarily bosses, but older guys started cooperating under that, that kind of weaponry that the government had. So it's really the government that, and people, let me clear this too. They say John Gotti destroyed the mafia. John Gotti did not destroy the mafia. The RICO Act destroyed the mafia. Gotti was, he was out there. Maybe he was a little bit too ostentatious, but it wasn't him. It was the racketeering laws that did it. No doubt about it.
Well, one of the things that was brought up in the interview with you and Sammy was, I guess Sammy tried to push, the idea that you were made because of a favor from your father. And you're saying that wasn't the case.
No. Here's what I'm saying. First of all, let me straighten this out. Nepotism in that life is very common. Joe Colombo brought his sons in. Carlo Gambino brought his nephews in. Carmine Persico brought his sons in. Nepotism is same like Hollywood. They bring their family in. Because why? Security. You figure your own blood is not going to ever turn. That's who you're going to promote. So that is across the board. Now, my dad proposed me, and what Sammy is saying is that I went in the first bunch. I was the first group that got made after the books were open, right, in 75.
They were closed for 20 years?
Yeah, about 20 years. And Sammy said there was guys that were waiting 20 years that should have jumped ahead of me because maybe they did more work. And I said, Sammy, look, my father had a lot of respect. He got a 50-year sentence, never opened up his mouth. He was the underboss of the family at one time. So if he proposed me at that point, I still had to prove myself. They weren't going to just say, okay, we'll do Sonny a favor and you're it. No. I spent my recruit and pledge period and I did whatever I was told to do. And at that point in time, a determination was made, hey, we're going to make this guy.
How long was the pledge period?
A little over 2 years.
Quite a while.
Yeah.
And they sent you on a lot of missions during that time?
I had to prove myself. Absolutely.
Was there ever a time where you were like, I'm not doing this shit. This is just too crazy?
Vlad, I once my dad proposed me, I had 2 goals. Number 1, help him get out of prison on a case he was framed on. And number 2, be the best possible mob guy I could be. So whatever they asked me to do, I was going to do. I wouldn't question it. I may not have liked it, but I did it.
Without going into your particular situation, we talked about this in previous interviews, where if your mob boss tells you to go kill somebody, you have to go do it as a made man. As a recruit, not so much though, right?
Well, no. As a recruit, you have to do it. This is...
Well, no, meaning that the repercussions. So for example, if a made man gets asked to do a hit and they say, no, I'm not going to do it, could they potentially get killed themselves?
Yes.
If a recruit gets asked to kill someone and the recruit says, I don't want to do it, would they still be killed, or is it, okay, this person's not going to be made and we're just going to distance ourselves?
Well, look at it both ways. You're not going to be made, number 1. And number 2, now you ask the guy to kill somebody who refuses, you're going to put him back out on the street. Is he ever going to become an informant because you gave him an order? So
now
that could be dangerous
about a murder,
too.
and they could potentially turn against you and put you in prison for the rest of your life.
So that could be dangerous. You don't refuse an order. Recruit or otherwise, you don't refuse it.
Have you seen situations, with people who are now gone that refused an order for a hit and end up getting killed themselves?
I've never seen anybody refuse an order. No,
Really?
no.
That's interesting. It's almost like brainwashing in a way, because oftentimes you don't know the person, right?
Correct.
I mean, sometimes you do,
Sometimes.
but other times it's like, here's so-and-so out in Philly, and, you know, do they even go into detail as to what happens, or they just say, go hit this
No,
guy?
I mean, they don't give you the whys or anything else. They just say this. Well, let me kind of clarify this. Some people think that every day on the street we're going out and baseball batting people and murdering people. No, it's not the case. Murder is taken very seriously in that life. It's discussed. The only one that can approve the murder formally is the boss. That's it. It's his order, yes or no. So it's taken very seriously. It's not random stuff that just happens every day. That's number one. Number two, a lot of times for a security reason, you'll be given a hit that you don't know anything about. You don't even know the guy. And they don't give you any of the details, and then that's for security, because you don't know what happened. If you ever got, pinched for it, I don't know why this guy got. I don't know anything. You can honestly say that. They don't want to give you that information. So, and then there's other times when you'll know straight out, hey, this is the reason why.
Well, one of the prominent hitmen in the mafia was Richard Kuklinski, a.k.a. the Iceman. Did you know him at all?
I didn't know him, but I believe that it was greatly embellished, his role in that life. You know, he was supposed to be part of DeMeo's crew and all that. I don't believe. I saw the movie and I heard a lot about him on the street. It was greatly embellished.
Yeah, I know. Later on, they try to tie Sammy the Bull into one of the murders that the Iceman did,
Right.
And we talked about this in our interview. That Sammy basically said, I guess he was, in a way, Sammy was facing no time. They were like, look, you're already doing 20 years. We'll have it run concurrent. We just want to close this case.
Right.
Just say you're involved in the murder, apologize to the family, and we'll make things easier for you and so forth. And he's like, this is one murder I was not involved in.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm gonna fight this thing because literally I had nothing to do with this. And ultimately came out that it was all a farce.
Yeah, it was all
He was
nonsense.
trying to shake someone down or whatever else. And, and then he ended up passing away himself.
Yeah, a lot with Kuklinski was embellished in the movie, and a lot that people said he wasn't that tied up with us guys.
I mean, who was, in terms of what you know and what came out in the media, who was the person that killed the most people in the mafia? Who was really the biggest psychopath who really just murder after murder? Who was like the serial killer, the mass murderer out there that everyone was scared of, essentially?
Okay, when you say everybody was scared of, let me straighten that out too. You weren't scared. Made guys were not scared of made guys because they were worried about getting killed from them, because it couldn't happen. Let's take Roy DeMeo. Roy's gone. Obviously, he has the reputation, the Gemini Lounge. And look, he was a killer, no doubt about it. Was I scared of Roy DeMeo? No, I had no reason to be scared of Roy DeMeo. He didn't impact me in any way. And remember this, if you think somebody's going to kill you, what are you going to do? You're going to kill him first. Or at least you're going to defend yourself. You're not going to sit there and wait for him. He's not any more capable than you, because we all knew how to pull the trigger when we had to. But he had the reputation. Obviously, Greg Scarpa had the reputation. I was friendly with Greg.
The Grim Reaper.
Close with Greg. He was part of our family. If you go back and you look at, back further, Murder Inc., I mean, between the Jews and the Italians, they killed a lot of guys.
Yeah.
So that organization was a scary organization. You want to get on the bad side of them.
Yeah, I mean, DeMeo, they say, was involved in over 200 murders through the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, look, do they exaggerate that? I think so. My father, they said he killed over 40 people. Never convicted him of any of them. Never even heard many of their names who he allegedly killed. My dad didn't really talk about it. My dad was a capable guy, no question about it. But did he kill 40 people? I don't know.
Right, but he did tell you at one point during his life, and he's gone now, that he did kill a bunch of people.
Yes.
So there's multiple bodies.
Yes.
Behind him. How did you feel about that when you actually said it?
Listen, I was part of the life at that point in time, so I understood, and people have their roles. But I will tell you this, my dad I wouldn't compare my dad to Roy DeMeo. He wasn't a serial killer. He didn't want to go out and start killing people. But He did the work, no question.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned that when you became part of the mafia, your dad told you if we ever do a crime together, 1 minute later it never happened.
Correct.
Which is why you were one of the few people that was never caught on wiretaps talking about anything.
That's correct. My dad told me if we commit a crime together, regardless of what it is, 30 seconds, a minute later, you ask me about it, I'll say, what are you talking about? No reason to ever discuss it again. And yeah, that was tremendous advice that he gave me. And as a result, I was never caught on any tapes that could put me in trouble.
Right. But John Gotti, on the other hand, I guess had like an apartment over a club, over a social club.
Yes.
Which he didn't think was tapped, but it was.
Yes.
And he talked about all these different murders.
I didn't hear all the tapes, but from what I heard, the tapes were damaging. John everybody knows this. John had a tendency to run his mouth. He talked quite a bit. He was, very vociferous in that way. So, and it got him in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, when you found out about the John Gotti wiretaps, what'd you think?
Well, it's not only found out about him. Angelo Ruggiero and I had the same law office at the time. He was represented by Cutler. I had John Jacobs. They were in the same office. And Angelo was listening to the wiretaps in preparation for one of the trials. And I would go up there and I'd hear, he said, Michael, you think this is bad? Angelo's bad stuff, And he was concerned about it, and it was bad. I mean, they talked a lot on these tapes. Buried themselves. So, listen, I always say this. Anything you want to know about our life, all you had to do is listen to all the tapes. So many guys got caught on tape saying so many things. And we had a tape, in our crew in the Casa Storta restaurant. It was under the table where Jerry Lang and all the guys used to meet. And they had a lot of stuff that was talked about. It's all over the tape. It's not a secret anymore, things that was said. So, and it was part of the feds went way ahead of us. We weren't prepared for the amount of surveillance or the high-tech technology that they threw at us. We weren't.
Right. And the feds is an organization you couldn't really buy off.
I'll tell you this, Vlad. At one point in time, I offered $2 million to try to get my dad to beat that case, and I couldn't get a buyer for it.
How did you put that out there?
Through some people that I knew and through some law enforcement that I knew. I said, $2 million on the table. We need to overturn this conviction. It's a frame-up anyway. Mm-hmm. I said, so we need some help, whether it goes to a judge, a prosecutor, I don't care where it goes. I just want my dad out. I want this conviction overturned. I couldn't do it.
No one wanted that money.
No.
I mean, were judges getting paid off?
More on the state level than the federal level. Yes.
So trying to bribe a federal judge is close to impossible.
From our experience, now maybe earlier on, 30s, 40s, 50s, I don't know. Our experience was very difficult to get through to the feds. When it came to organized crime stuff, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a documentary on Netflix. It was like the biggest Social Security scam in U.S. history. It was, in the South somewhere. I forgot where it was. But essentially this lawyer had paid off a judge and the judge above him to essentially just rubber stamp every Social Security claim that came his way. You know what I'm saying? So literally like thousands and thousands of people were getting permanent Social Security regardless of their medical condition. They would just stamp it off, and then the judge above him would, essentially stamp it. And then when it all came out, the judge tried to kill himself, and that's so forth. And the sad part about the whole situation was that as soon as the whole thing was blown out of the water and everyone knew what happened, every single person that this lawyer worked with to get Social Security benefits got all their Social Security benefits shut off right then and there, regardless of whether they were legitimate or not.
Right.
And, maybe 25% of them were illegitimate, but the other 75% of them were people that really just wanted a fast track to get the benefits faster. Right. And like all these people, people started to kill themselves. Yeah. People started to commit suicide because they were depending on that money.
These things always come out, Vlad. They always come out one way or the other. It's at some point in time, always.
Well, remember the whole The whole McDonald's monopoly situation. Remember they did
Oh yeah.
He did an HBO documentary on that.
Yeah, they talked about the Colombos involved with that. Honestly,
Exactly.
I don't really remember that too much.
Okay, so you weren't part of that.
No,
that scam.
I wasn't part of it. No.
Okay. There was a guy named Big Sal who implicated you in 5 murders. He had turned informant.
Yeah.
You were in prison at the time.
Yes.
Tell me about the situation.
I was on my way out after my parole violation, and I had a couple of months to go. And a New York Daily News reporter somehow reaches out to me and tells me about this. And I said, well, he's lying, Michelta. He's already been an informant, and he's cooperating with the government. And I can tell you this, Vlad. I have never seen, in my own cases, now remember, I went to trial 5 times. I've never seen a government informant, cooperating witness, get on the stand, left hand on a Bible, right hand, swear to tell the truth, and lie through his teeth. I've never seen it. They lie. They embellish whatever they got to do. And the government goes along with it as long as it supports their case. And I said, he's lying. But I'll be honest with you, I was nervous about it because I figured I was getting out in my federal case and the state was going to come there and try to indict me because they couldn't hit me with a RICO case. I had been out of the life and they couldn't go RICO on me. It had to be a state case. Well, that never happened. And eventually, Michelta was found out to be a liar, and they threw him out of the program, and that was the end of that. Done. But, I was approached by the feds also to cooperate in this. Cooperate because this goes beyond you. There was other people that ordered these murders. And I said, and let me tell you something. I could have hurt a lot of guys. And I said, Michelta's lying. It'll come out. And eventually it did. That was the end of it.
Right. But you said for 3 months you didn't sleep.
Yeah, because listen, I know what these people are capable of, Vlad. I mean, you got to worry about these things. You don't take it lightly.
Well, there was a situation with one of your relatives, Tutti Franzese.
My cousin, yeah,
Your cousin.
Tutti.
You said that he almost got you killed.
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh God, that was a situation where, it's a long story. It's very personal. Long story short, my cousin Tutti had brought a story back to my dad while my dad was in prison that my mom might have had an affair. And I was very upset about it. My mother said it wasn't true. I was young at that point in time. I tracked down where the story originally came from, and I threatened the guy who was a maid guy with a gun. I put a gun in his mouth and threatened him. Word got back to his family and my family, and big discussion. Alpo Persico, Jr.'s brother, was acting boss at that time. And he said, Michael, you die for this. You don't put a gun in a maid guy's mouth. And I told him what happened, destroying my family, all of that. And he went to bat for me and basically saved my life because I could have been killed at that point in time. But he sent me down to Florida. He said, you got to get out of here for a couple of weeks until I straighten this out because if they put a hit on you, I don't know if I can stop it.
Okay, but the whole thing was a lie?
Yeah, it was a lie.
And how did it actually get
Never
found
happened.
out?
Well, because the guy admitted it never went anywhere. Supposedly either my mother passed her phone number to him or he passed the phone number to my mother, and somehow it got to Tutti. This is a long time ago. I don't remember exactly. But Tutti, rather than coming to us and try to resolve it, he immediately put my mother on the spot, and my father sent back, I want a divorce. It's over. Relationship is over. So after I did all of this, I went to see my father and told him this was all a lie, and that was the end of that. But it was very serious for me at the time. I almost got killed, and I was very upset. My father was very upset with my cousin. He was a maid guy at the time, too.
Well, speaking of family members, one of the things that Sammy did not want to discuss in our interview was the murder of his brother-in-law, Nicky Scabetta. Mm-hmm. Did you know about this when it happened?
Heard about it, but, I don't know anything about it to comment on it, no.
Well, the story was that Scabetta, who was, I guess, using cocaine and also was an alcoholic, got into several public fights and insulted the daughter of George DeChico.
Mm-hmm.
There was also another part saying that he was allegedly gay. So Paul Castellano basically sent, his brother-in-law, Sammy the Bull, to do the hit. And Gravano said, I chose Nicky. I took an oath that Cosa Nostra came before everything. And he ended up getting him killed. Is this a typical situation where someone put a hit on a family member? I mean, it's his brother. It's not technically his blood, but it's his wife's brother. I mean, you got to go and kill someone, then come home, and your wife is freaking out. Oh, where's my brother? Where's my brother? And you got to pretend to console her, knowing that you just killed, your kid's uncle. And you know what I'm saying? It's really just a very ugly situation.
Well, listen, things like that don't happen very often. And again, I can't comment because for me, it would be third and fourth hand information. I never discussed this with Sammy, so I have no, idea at all. And I would go along with whatever Sammy said at that time. But no, that's not a normal situation. Look, we never went after family members. That was a rule, unless the family member was involved and did something to screw up, then hey, then you're fair game at that point. But people would ask me, Michael, when you walked away, were you worried about your sons or any of your family members? I said, no, my sons weren't involved. Nobody's going to retaliate against them to come after me. That's not what we did. And it never happened. So in this case, it was unfortunate. But again, I can't really comment further than that.
Well, homosexuality in the mafia, I mean, there's still people, right? A certain percentage of the population is gay, mafia or otherwise. It just is what it is. There's gay people in sports that are now starting to come out and so forth. What was the overall, in terms of the way the mafia approached gay people and especially gay members? How did it really work back then?
Fortunately, I was never had a situation like that to deal with, but it was absolutely frowned upon. I think if you were a made guy and you were gay and it was known, I think you were in a lot of trouble. You could have got killed for that.
You could be killed just for being gay.
Yeah.
Right, because wasn't there a situation, I think you guys talked about it, about a guy that went to a swingers club with his wife, and he did something with like a black guy in the club, and the wife talked about it, and then it was like turned into a whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Situation. Okay, so there was no one that was openly gay.
No,
in the mafia.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, back then, gosh, no, it wouldn't happen.
Okay. In terms of the guys, if you were to just look at the mafia as a whole, what percentage of people who get busted end up cooperating as opposed to actually taking their time?
Well,
because no one's supposed to cooperate, but clearly lots of people cooperate. I've interviewed a lot of them myself. I mean, in terms of people that get 10 plus years, because obviously if you get a year, you're probably not going to cooperate. But if you're getting 10 plus, what percentage of the people end up cooperating versus actually taking the time?
I don't think you can give a percentage, but I'll give you the numbers that I heard during the last war that we had in the Colombo family with Arena and Persico. I heard 12 or 13 guys got killed. I was in a hole during that time. I heard 18 people cooperated and 63 went to prison and didn't cooperate. That's what I heard. And I never did anything to verify that. But listen, the greater percentage of guys are not cooperating. No question. And not everybody gets 100 years. If a guy gets 15 years, he's not going to cooperate, in my opinion, most of the time. Especially if they've been around. Yeah, but if they've been around for a while, and listen, not everybody can cooperate. Not everybody has valuable information that the government is willing to cut a deal with, too.
Right.
You got to remember that. Guys may offer to cooperate, but hey, you got nothing. We already know this. Give us something good. And if you can't, and I think there are guys that do that, but they're just rejected or they're not given a good enough deal.
Right. Well, Sammy the Bull cooperated. Mm-hmm. We talked about this in our interview. He was responsible for 38 people, partially responsible for 38 people who went to prison. He cooperated for 2 years, where he took the stand in 6 trials. And he took down a couple of bosses. Chin Gigante was one of the people. who's the head of the Genovese. Lil Vic Orena was one of the people that
He was a Colombo guy, yeah.
The Sammy cooperated against. A bunch of other big guys, including 11 captains, a crooked cop, and a Teamster head. When you found out that Sammy was cooperating, what did you think?
I mean, I knew, Sammy, look, was a real guy at a high level, and I knew that a lot of people would be in trouble. No question. Sammy was a real guy, and he got around. He was the underboss. So, whenever you hear that, obviously, people are going to fall.
Were you surprised?
Again, I didn't know Sammy well on the street. I didn't know him, so it wasn't like he was a friend of mine or I had business with him. But yeah, you're always surprised when you hear that. I mean, look, he's the underboss, So yeah, it's surprising and it's concerning.
I mean, we went into the whole story of it. Essentially, he said what really flipped him was when he heard the tapes from John Gotti, and essentially John Gotti was trying to pin the murders on him. He was basically trying to, in the tape conversations, it was like, I got this crazy guy in my crew that I've lost control over, and he's killing all these people, and I can't stop it, and I can't do anything about him, and I'm scared for my own life. And essentially, he was just trying to push all the murders on him for a chance to walk away himself. How often does that happen? I mean, number one, when bosses get busted, do people step up and take the blame for them? Or because bosses generally don't cooperate against their guys, do they?
Well, there's no, it all depends on the individual case.
Yeah.
And it's hard to comment on that without knowing the specifics of the case. But, do guys step up and take the weight for the boss? I mean, I don't know of situations where that has happened, especially nobody could have done that in a commission case or any of that. Because these guys were on tape and there was a lot of, alleged evidence against them. Couldn't have done that. But listen, Sammy, I have no reason to disbelieve Sammy. I've had this discussion with him. And look, we knew, John had a tendency to talk. I don't know what specifically went on with them, but I've accepted what Sammy told me.
I mean, when Paul Castellano got killed
by
John Gotti and Sammy, and there's a crew of 11 guys that did it, that was an unsanctioned hit on a boss.
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I looked into this whole thing. They spoke to various people in the 5 families to get like an unofficial sort of okay, but they knew if they went to the commission and asked them that,
they would have said no.
They would have said no, and then Paul would have found out, and then they would have all been killed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an unsanctioned hit on a boss, which I think hasn't happened at that point in like 20 years or 20 to 30 years. There was like an attempt on another guy, on another boss at one point. Yeah. I mean, I think like the last time there was an unsanctioned attempt on a boss was Frank Costello.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sounds right. Yeah.
So
the other thing would be Joe Colombo, if you believe that, it was a sanctioned hit by the commission, which I heard there could be some truth to that. Yeah.
Okay. So you have this unsanctioned hit, Paul Castellano.
Mm-hmm.
And, after that, in a relatively short period of time, John Gotti becomes the new boss, even though he wasn't even the underboss at that time. And everyone seemed to be kind of okay with it. Doesn't that go against what the commission is supposed to stand for?
I don't think everybody was okay with that. I don't. I mean, there was a lot of talk on the street about it. A lot of people didn't like that move by John. Chin obviously didn't like it. Persico didn't like it. But he did it, So I think eventually he would have paid the price for it. I really do. There's a lot of controversy about John, at least that I knew of at that time. And I think it was a bold move on his part that was not taken well by many, many in that life.
I mean, it was done in public, in front of like hundreds of people. Essentially, it made front page news everywhere. here's a secret society that's doing public hits of bosses,
Yeah.
in New York City, or was it Brooklyn or New York? I forgot where
It
it
was
was.
in New York.
New York,
Yeah.
right. There you go.
Middle of Manhattan.
In middle of Manhattan. And suddenly the Teflon Don emerges after that, and he's wearing the furs and everything else like that. I mean, did you know Paul Castellano?
I did, yeah.
How well?
Not really well. I mean, he was a boss. I met him as a recruit. I had an incident with him and met him a couple of times afterwards. When I drove Tom DeBella and Andrew Russo around, they would meet with him and I would drive them. But, listen, it wasn't a popular move. It wasn't. But that's how John did things. Listen, look, there's a new book written by John Gleason, who was the prosecutor, I think, that finally prosecuted Gotti. And he just read, after 25 years, he wrote the book. And he said that, John Gotti single-handedly, got the entire FBI and everybody upset with everybody in that life because he was so ostentatious, so out there, so in your face. I mean, you can't do that. Anybody knows that. Anytime you become high profile like that and you're thumbing your nose in the face of the government, you're going to go down. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to bring heat on everybody else. It's another reason why Colombo wasn't looked at right, because with the Italian-American Civil Rights League, he had his crew, made guys marching online in front of the FBI building. Guys didn't like that. Guys that were relatively unknown became well-known because they're out there every day, and they had to be. And I know, I was there, every single day. So that's frowned upon in a big way. That could get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, following the death of Paul Castellano, there was just a bloodbath when it came to that crew. And I remember on April 13, 1986, DiCicco?
Frank DiCicco, yeah.
DiCicco.
Yeah.
Frank DiCicco got killed after a bomb exploded in his car.
Yeah.
And that was, from what I understand, a big no-no. From what I understand, the commission outlawed car bombs and bombing in general.
I don't know if it was outlawed, but again, these things are frowned upon. Remember this. The commission cannot tell a boss what to do in his own family. I've said this many times. I liken the commission like the United Nations. They get together, they try to make policy, but they can't tell anybody, they can't tell the president of the United States what he has to do in his country. He has autonomy in that regard. Same with the mob. You can advise, you can say, you can try to set policy, but ultimately you're in charge of your family. Nobody can tell you what to do. Now, it's up to you if you want to go along with the commission and say, okay, we'll all abide by it. Probably the smart thing to do, not to get people against you. But, so I never heard that during my time, I never heard that car bombings were off. Never heard it.
Well,
it might have been, but I never heard it.
I mean, from what I read, it said bombs had long been banned by the mafia out of concern they would put innocent people in harm's way. So they thought that the Zips were behind it, which were the Sicilian mafia guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know about these guys?
No. Well, I knew them, but I didn't hear that they were behind that.
And I remember interviewing a guy about this, and I guess it was called the Black Hand originally.
Yeah.
And these guys, I mean, they called their area, the cops called it Bomb Alley, because they would constantly just set up bombs and blow each other up. And it was
same
just
like in Italy.
Yeah.
They still do it.
Yeah. I guess it's a slightly different way of doing it over there than over here. Well, I mean, you talk about the commission, and essentially the commission was a generally, secret organization that no one knew about. And then mob boss Joseph Bonanno wrote a book in 1983 called A Man of Honor, which he actually mentioned the commission and broke everything down. Was he still alive when that book came out?
Oh, yeah.
Did you know him?
No, I didn't know. Bonanno was already, outlawed to Arizona.
He had already cooperated.
It's not that
he didn't cooperate?
No, he didn't cooperate, but he was told he would have been killed. Bonanno would have been killed because of something that happened. And he was told, because he was in a plot to try to kill somebody, they exposed it, and they said, we're not going to kill you. You're a boss, but you're out. And that's when he moved to Arizona.
Okay.
But Rudy Giuliani will tell you that he was so incensed over that book. He went to visit Bonanno in jail, talked to him about it. But he said, essentially in that book, Bonanno laid out the whole case for the commission for him. He laid it out. He laid it out in that book. There was no reason to write that book. It was ridiculous. If you read, I even read it and I laughed. He's trying to make the mafia like this benevolent association, like we were the Catholic Church, only better. It was crazy. And Giuliani will tell you, he laid out the commission case for me. So
yeah, you call it a bonehead move.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
There's no reason for it. He didn't need the money. I don't know why he wrote it. I don't know what he was trying to do.
Okay, and when he wrote it, was he in prison at the time?
No, he was in Arizona.
He was in Arizona just living his life.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book exposing the whole infrastructure of the mob. And I guess like the RICO case was built partially around that book?
Absolutely. I mean, Giuliani states it. He said he laid out the commission case for him. He gave me the blueprint for it.
Well, Frank Sinatra has always been tied to the mob in various ways, but was he actually in the mafia?
Sinatra was not in the mafia, no. I mean, I know Frank from the time I was a kid, you know, at the Copacabana with my dad. Met him a couple of times there, met him again in the Italian-American Civil Rights League. Look, he did favors, but was he obligated to the mob? No. I never saw that, never heard that, never witnessed that, but he did favors. He was smart, he knew. There was a time when his son, Frank Jr., was appearing at the San Suzanne, a place that my father had an interest in. And nobody showed up the first night. And it was their fault, right? So we got a call. Hey, Frank's son is here, blah, 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 blah. So we filled the place up for the next 3 days. We made sure everybody came. So in turn, he owes us a favor. He did Joe Colombo a favor by appearing at the Italian-American Civil Rights League, you know, the rallies that we had. But no, he wasn't in the mob. He, you know, I don't know where that came from, but definitively he was not.
Just had a lot of friends.
Yeah, he had friends, of course. So did Sammy Davis.
Yeah?
Yeah, Sammy, well, he did a movie for me, you know. He wouldn't take any money. I gave him a gold watch because he wouldn't accept money from me.
Sammy Davis Jr.?
Yeah, Sammy Davis.
Well, what movie was this?
It was called Knights of the City.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I went to prison. It was part of and they cut him out of the film.
Really?
He played but he did a great role. He played a reformed gangster. And he was, Leon Isaac Kennedy was in the film, and he was, you know, advising these young gangbangers. But yeah, he was on my set for 3 days. We had a trailer for him. He wouldn't take any money. I knew him from when I was a kid. Good guy. You know, Dean Martin, not as much. He stayed away. But a lot of the guys, because look, we frequented the places that, you know, way back when especially, they all played the Copa. Mob guys were all over the Copa. My father was there quite often. So we knew we had relationships and they respected, but they weren't, you know, part of the mob.
Well, I remember my interview with Sammy. You know, once he left witness protection and he wrote a book, he started doing interviews. I think it was like, was it Diane Sawyer or Barbara Walters?
Diane Sawyer.
Diane Sawyer. There we go. He talked about everything else like that. And it wasn't until he did this one interview in a newspaper where he said that he actually became friendly with some of the federal agents that were assigned to him and were involved in his case. And he actually considers them some, you know, his friends at this point. And after he did the article, he called up the newspaper and said, I want this cut out. I want you to scrap the article. And they said no. And I guess there was a back and forth. And at one point, I guess they threatened to expose like where he lives or whatever else. The article comes out and the mafia was so upset over this that they actually sent some hitmen to go kill him. I guess 4 guys were sent to Arizona to go find him. They couldn't find him. And then they ended up getting busted themselves for doing something else. And they ended up, you know, turning against him and so forth. Have you heard the story?
I heard it, but I can't really comment on how valid it was. I mean, Sammy, I'm sure knows, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, he talked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about it in interviews. It's not a secret. He admitted that actually happened. But what do you think when you look at that situation? Why is this such a big deal for an ex-mafia guy to say that he's friends with the feds?
I've said it.
Yeah, you said it.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of friends in law enforcement now. I'm not sharing information. We're not doing anything other than that we're friends, you know? Listen, guys on the street, they have to say they frown upon it. What are they going to say? Oh, great. You know, it's wonderful. We love that. But that doesn't automatically mean you're putting people in trouble. I mean, the second in command of Beverly Hills Police Department is a dear friend of mine. He's now the head of, he's chief of police at UCLA. Very good friend of mine. You know, there's a couple of cops that were around when I was during my time. They're retired now. We're friends. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. But what does that mean? Listen, some guys on the street during our time, you gotta understand, we had 750 made guys, comprised all 5 families. A lot of us had relatives that were law enforcement, neighbors that were law enforcement. We didn't shun them. We didn't automatically say, hey, you're no good. Maybe we didn't get in trouble as a result of that, but we had friends, even during our time in that life.
Mm-hmm. Were you paying off the cops at one point?
Some of them, yeah.
Give me an example of a cop payoff.
We had a gambling spot. You know, we paid them off to leave us alone.
And how would you give them the money?
Cash.
Just show up and be like...
Yeah, give them an envelope, cash.
Okay. How often did they get caught?
Never got caught.
Never got caught.
No.
What was the most you've ever paid a single cop?
10 grand.
I mean, in terms of like total. That's just one payoff. I'm talking about, did you pay them? Can you imagine? I mean, can you remember like a cop that you paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to over time?
No.
Didn't need to.
No.
Tens of thousands though.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. You know, on a regular basis, if we had a game that they were, you know, leaving us alone on, you know, a couple of different situations like that, but not millions for sure. No.
Okay.
And nothing that was so damaging to the public that, you know, we weren't paying them off to keep quiet on hits. At least I wasn't. You know, maybe some guys were. I wasn't.
I mean, you hear some pretty crazy stories. I mean, there was, you know, when you look at, like, for example, the death row Suge Knight story, that there's, you know, part of the story was that there was cops on payroll, they're out doing hits for them and so forth. You hear these types of things.
Yeah.
Were those type of things going on that you knew of? Where the cops were actually doing the hits?
I think in 1 or 2 cases I heard that, you know, that happened. And I wouldn't say it's impossible. You know, it's not like out of the realm of possibility. Could happen. Listen, they're people too. You know, you can get to them sometimes. You're talking about the 2 Mafia Cops specifically, the ones they ended up getting busted and went to jail.
Which guys are those?
Forget their name. Carrie, I wasn't involved with them, but
what's their name? Carrie?
No, Cassiopa, something. I forget their names. But they're 2, you know, it was a big case. They ended up going to jail. They did a couple of mob hits.
Here we go. Steven Caracappa?
Yeah.
Caracappa?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And Louis Eppolito.
Yeah.
Eppolito.
They're both dead now. I believe they died. They died in jail, I'm pretty sure. At least one of them did.
Both of them are dead.
Yeah.
One of them died in 2017, age 74. Another one died in 2019 and 71. They're both dead. I haven't heard about these guys.
Oh, yeah. It was a big case.
So these are Mafia Cops.
Yes.
So let's take a look. Worked on behalf of the 5 families, principally the Lucchese and Gambino crime families. Became known as the Mafia Cops. In 2006, they were convicted of labor racketeering, extortion, narcotics, illegal gambling, obstruction of justice, 8 counts of murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. Charges stemming from the 1980s and early 1990s in New York City. Both were convicted and sentenced to life in prison in 2008. 2009, actually.
Yeah.
Not that long ago, actually.
No.
It took them a while to bring these guys. So they were doing stuff in the 80s and 90s, and it wasn't until 2000 they were convicted in 2006. So it took them...
Took a while.
15, 20 years to actually put all this together and put them away.
And the informants start to come and, you know, all of a sudden they talk about this and that, and then they develop a case. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, what say, the wheels of justice move slowly?
At times.
Okay. That's pretty crazy. You know, and what's interesting also is I remember on our interview, you talked about how Sammy the Bull showed up to a funeral of a guy that he killed and got mad at the guy for getting killed.
Well,
for him killing him.
I thought it was funny. I mean, this was Sammy I think it was in the Patrick Bet-David Valuetainment. I think it was that interview when he said, he looked down at the casket and he said, "Why did you make me kill you?"
I mean, yeah, I brought it up, and he said, yeah, that actually happened.
Yes.
I asked him who it was because I'm not going to get into that, but
Yeah.
he basically said that the way he justified it was everyone knows the rules coming into this. So if you do something, someone like Sammy is going to have to be sent to kill you. Like, it's not a surprise as in terms of the repercussions of your actions. So he was mad that he had to do it because he knew the guy knew that it would be done to him. Michael Franzese in one of our interviews actually said that you killed a guy and you went to the funeral and blamed him for killing him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you say who that was, or was that part of your deal or no?
Well, it's in another story, but who it was is unimportant.
Okay.
I'll tell you
But
what,
you actually did
what
that.
it was. What it is that we have rules that we live by. So we know if we break the rules, like when I cooperated, I broke a rule.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame a guy to come and kill me. He was my friend. He's in the life. He's supposed to. Why should he die? I broke the rule. His job now is to kill me. So when I looked at the guy in the coffin, I told him, bro, look what you did. You know you would get killed. And you know more than likely it'll be me or Joe Blow who's pulling the trigger. This is what you did. Look at your kids. Look at your family. You did this.
A bit of a weird set of logic, but
You know what, though? I agree with Sammy on that.
Yeah?
Because, look, you got to understand, we all know the rules. We're all supposed to play by the rules. And we also know this. Look, one of the horrors of that life is what? You make a mistake, your best friend walks you into a room. Why? Because you don't suspect anything with your best friend. He walks you into a room, you don't walk out again. That doesn't mean your best friend is happy that he did it, but he got an order, and you got to do it. So, yeah, I understand Sammy could look and say, well, why'd you make me do this? I didn't want to do this. Maybe from the outside looking in, you say, this is crazy. It's warped. But I understand that, and I agree with Sammy on that, because you did things you didn't want to do. Look, I'm going to lay that. There's some guys in that life that obviously didn't care about committing violent acts. The DeMeos of the world, maybe Greg Scarpa. I don't know what was inside of them, but they didn't care. Yeah, give me the job. I want to do it. There's other guys that I got an order. I'm not happy about it, but I'm going to do it. You kind of step outside of yourself because sometimes you don't want to do these things, but you have to. So there's two types of individuals in that life. And so I could see Sammy getting mad because I would feel the same way. What the heck happened? Why did you do this? You know it's against the rules. Look what you caused. So I get it.
yeah, I mean, in that same interview, you said that, during your heyday, of course, that you would actually kill someone who went after your family. That you wouldn't want to put them in prison. You'd actually want to kill them.
If somebody went after my family,
Yeah.
I feel the same way today. I don't want anybody hurting my family. Now, look, I'm not going to cause anything, but I'll be darned. I'm going to defend them to my death, no doubt.
But would you actually go and risk your own freedom to take the law into your own hands in 2022 at 71 years old?
You know what, Vlad? I mean, I'm a Christian, and I believe in
Turn the other cheek.
Huh?
Turn the other cheek is one of your founding principles, right?
Yes, but I don't know that I can do that. I'm not saying I can't, but listen, my family is very dear to me, and if anybody was to threaten to hurt them, I could possibly react maybe the way I shouldn't.
Yeah.
But you draw the line at some place. But yes, I'm a Christian. Doesn't mean I'm not a sinner.
Right.
I do my best, to stay on track. But there are certain situations where, you just, I always say this. You can take the boy out of Brooklyn. You can't always take all of the Brooklyn out of the boy. In a lot of ways, we still are who we were. And those things don't go away. You control it now. You know it's the wrong thing to do. It's like I said this 100 times. I have no moral issue whatsoever with stealing tax money from the government. None. Morally, why? Because they're all thieves. I could do better with the money than they can. But I won't do it. I'm not going to break the law. I'm not going to jeopardize my family or my freedom. I won't do it because it's illegal. But morally, I don't have an issue with it.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. You could say that it's a victimless crime, but the reality is that it's not. Stealing money from the government, you're not actually putting it to better use. You're buying airplanes and yachts and,
Well, back then.
and mansions and clothes and vacations and so forth.
Yes.
You're not exactly Robin Hood here. You're not stealing from the government and
correct.
putting it back into poor communities and building your own rec centers.
No, but what I did do at the time, I lowered the price of gas at the pumps. So
Okay.
people would probably enjoy that right now.
Right, especially now. But I'm
No,
saying,
no, let me be clear. I'm not justifying what I did back then. I'm talking about right now. Morally, I wouldn't have an issue because, listen, everything that's legal isn't always moral. Just because the government makes a law, that doesn't mean it's the right thing.
right, marijuana has been illegal most of our lives. And now look, now you can go buy some at a corner store.
Gambling was illegal.
Yes.
Until the government gets involved and they run it.
Liquor was illegal.
Liquor was illegal.
Right.
So,
Right. There's you can't even say God-given, rights are not God-given. They're just a set of rules that someone decided to enact and stand behind.
Yes.
So
So
God is not involved in your rights.
That's correct. So everything that's moral is not always legal,
Yes.
and vice versa.
Right. But stealing money off of gas is not exactly moral. You can't say it's a moral thing to do.
It's not. But what I'm saying is I don't have a moral issue with it.
You don't have a moral
In
issue.
my head, whether right or wrong, morally, I wouldn't say, well, I'm going to hell because I'm stealing tax money off the thieving government. I wouldn't say that. Now, that doesn't mean that, again, I wouldn't do it because it is against the law. And I'm not going to jeopardize my freedom or my family. But if you said to me, morally, is this I don't have an issue.
Well, I mean, when you look at the interview that you and Sammy had together, the one thing that I noticed at one point was that you admitted that you had made mistakes during your time with the mafia and you feel bad about those mistakes. And you admit that you wish you could redo it and you have an issue with some of the actions that you did. Sammy the Bull, not so much. Sammy seemed like, well, I remember in my interview, I asked him about the murders. I said, do you feel bad about the murders? He goes, well, these were all soldiers. Does the guy coming back from Vietnam feel bad about all the Vietnamese that he killed? Or is he considered a hero for killing those guys? He's like, Sammy's like, I never killed kids. I never killed women. I killed other soldiers and they try to kill me and so forth. So a lot of times, he just did not feel a lot of remorse. You yourself have never, been connected to any murders and so forth, but you were in that life. Why do you think there's such a deviation between the way the two of you really think in that regard?
Well, listen, I understand what Sammy is saying. He said, look, what he's saying is the ground is level. We all understand the rules. I could have gone down the same way these guys gone down. It was unfortunate maybe that I was given the contract, but they knew that they were in trouble. They knew they shouldn't have done that. So it's not like killing innocent people, innocent women and children. I can understand how that's justified because that's how we justify it. Hey, we're all playing under the same rules. You violate. I'm told tonight that I got made. You make a mistake, you can pay with your life. That's it. You follow the rules. So we understood that. Going in, we all get it. So I can understand how Sammy justifies that. In my case, look, there's things that I did that I have regrets for. There's lives that I wish I could have saved that I couldn't. That's still way heavy on me, But that's part of the life. It's part of the life.
Do you feel as a Christian, based on all the things you did, that you're going to heaven?
Well, listen, the basis of the Christian faith that we have to believe, if we believe in Christianity, is that if we're sincerely sorry for our sins, keyword sincerely, can't pull a scam on God, he knows our hearts,
Right.
and we accept Christ as our Savior, then our sins are forgiven. That's the basis of the Christian faith.
Any sin at all?
Any sin at all, doesn't matter. Sin is sin in God's eyes. So, but again, because we as Christians believe you can't earn heaven. It's a gift. It's a gift from God. Grace is a gift from God. And you can't make up for what you did in the past. That's it. It's done. You can't change it. It's done. But you can sincerely repent, do better. As a Christian, try to live a Christian life and accept Christ, sincerely accept him. And yes, you believe at that point you're going to heaven. I do.
So, for example, the kid who killed, the 18-year-old who killed 19 children and 2 teachers. If right before he got killed by the police, if he said, something, God, I'm so sorry for these 21 people that I killed. I feel so bad. I sincerely feel bad about this. I truly, in my heart, regret these 21 murders that I've done, plus everything that comes with it. Like I don't know if you heard, but the husband of one of the teachers had a heart attack a couple days later. They had 4 children. The level of destruction and chaos is going to play out in certain people for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
So in your point of view, if right before that he got shot in the head by the Border Patrol agent, if he truly spoke to God and said, I am so sorry for everything I did, that he would go to heaven?
Well, remember the second half of that. You got to accept Christ as your Savior.
He accepts Christ right then and there in that classroom, surrounded by dead bodies.
That's the basis of the Christian faith. But remember this. This is hard for people to understand. We live in this earth a short time. Eternity is forever. Hell is forever. So we understand that God looks at it, that this is a short time we're here on earth. But eternity, eternal damnation is forever. So God is giving us, he's throwing us a lifeline. And that's what we believe. He's a merciful, gracious, and just God. But again, you can't pull a scam on him. You can't, I'm sorry, and think that's it. No, neither can I. God's going to be the judge of that.
Yeah, if you look at the Old Testament, you got a pretty vengeful and sometimes petty God. When you look at, I feel like when Jesus came around, that's when you got the forgiveness and so forth. But you look at the Old Testament,
absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about plagues,
no doubt,
running swords, death of children.
No doubt about it.
Like it's God was kind of gangster back in the Old Testament times. It wasn't Jesus sort of softened up the Christian image in a way.
No doubt about it. Jesus changed it all.
Jesus changed it all.
No
right.
doubt.
But I mean, you do agree with me what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, the Old Testament, God was pretty rough, just. But listen, he also prophesied quite a bit that the Savior would be coming.
Yeah.
So I can't rationalize why God did what he did, but I want to emphasize that Christians, billions of Christians throughout history, have to believe that. And listen, I'm going to tell you this. When I came to Christ, I was in a hole. I think we talked about this. And I challenged God. I said, I can't buy into this too easy. I said, I trusted my Father. I took an oath. I'm in a hole for the rest of my life, maybe. So I did what I considered strong research. I did the work to corroborate the evidence and to look for the evidence that supported the New Testament, the Old Testament, the New Testament. And I was convinced, based upon my research. And in the past 25 years, it's only gotten stronger for me. Not only in my life, but in the life of others that I've seen. So yeah, I believe it. I believe it with all my heart. And again, that doesn't make me perfect in any way. The Bible tells us we're all imperfect beings. And that's why we can never earn our way into heaven. Can't earn our way. It's a gift. And that's as Christians, Catholics, that's what we believe. And to me, I believe it with all my heart.
Well, these days, RICO is, very much in the news, especially in the hip hop world. We talked about this a little bit before the interview, but one of the biggest rappers in the world right now, Young Thug, along with his crew, YSL, along with another very prominent rapper named Gunna, got hemmed up in a RICO case, a state RICO case involving 28 people. Nobody's given bond. These are multimillionaires that are sitting in prison right now, awaiting trial.
So there has to be murders involved in this.
Well, yeah. So essentially, this is the way it started. And I actually pulled up the paperwork. I interviewed one of the journalists in Atlanta that had been following this for a year, and we kind of went through it piece by piece. And what happened was, this was, I think, close to, 10 years ago or so. A another gang leader that they had certain issues with. There was a rumor allegedly that he was cooperating. We're not sure about this part. This part's a little bit fuzzy, but this guy, Young Thug, is actually in paperwork renting the car that ends up committing the murder. And that's what kind of set the ball rolling, right? So this guy got killed and Young Thug is connected to it based on this car rental. And then this whole thing starts over the course of years. Shortly after the murder, Young Thug goes on social media and says, you guys are out there, you lied to your girlfriend, you lied to your friends, you lied to your mother, then you go in court and tell the truth. Guys like you need to be killed. Sincerely, YSL. That becomes part of the case. And then all these lyrics become part of the case. And him and this other crew starts beefing, and he's like, oh, I should have been killed you if not the way you treat your mother. And then, there's wiretaps here, there's phone conversations there, and they're using lyrics from songs to go along and put the whole thing together. It's really extremely messy. And the fact that no one's being given a bond shows how serious it is. Now, this is a state RICO case as opposed to a federal RICO case. Now, you've gone through both.
Yes.
You've gone through, 2 federal and 1 state RICOs?
Yes.
Got it. Tell me what the difference is between a state and federal RICO.
Well, again, depending upon the state.
This is Georgia in this case.
I'm not familiar with the state RICO law in Georgia.
You were Florida, was it?
Mine was in Florida. They're similar, very similar.
Yeah.
The state cases were designed after the federal racketeering case.
Right.
And basically what they have to prove, if it's the same, number one, they have to prove that there is a criminal enterprise that exists and that you're part of it. Not too difficult.
Yeah.
Usually mafia, how do you not, prove that there's a mafia? There's enough tapes and everybody else talking about it, and one witness can verify that. And then the way the federal racketeering case worked, and it was similar in Florida, the statute, you had to have one crime committed within 5 years. One predicate act committed within 5 years. And then the next predicate act could have happened 30 years ago. It could have been a case that you were acquitted in, but you were accused of, and that could be the second predicate act. Ridiculous, but that's how it happened. And then they don't need much to prove this. From what I'm hearing here, first of all, if these guys are locked up, they're doing it for one reason. They want to flip people, and they'll start flipping.
28 people.
You're gonna have,
There's a high percentage of this.
You're going to see they're going to be making deals, no doubt about it. And listen, if the government doesn't have to go state, federal, if they don't have to go to trial, great. So if they get enough people to turn and they start offering deals to everybody, great. If not, they'll take them to trial. But that's the reason they don't have bail. No doubt about it. They want people to start flipping. They're probably doing it already.
Yeah, and if you look at the case carefully, there was one guy that was affiliated with that crew named Big Briss. And what really set the ball rolling in terms of the indictments and the arrests was he shot a cop 6 times. And since he's affiliated with this, there was this huge public outrage over this. Sure. So they ended up, essentially saying, okay, that triggered all the arrests and everything else like that. And once the arrests actually started happening, when I was talking to the journalist about this, he basically said that Young Thug's father knew that the indictments were coming and so forth. So you would think that you would clean up house and make sure that there's nothing around when the police end up kicking down your door. But when they ended up raiding Young Thug's house, they found something called a switch, which is a handgun converted into an automatic weapon, which is 10 years by itself, along with a bunch of lean, along with the, huge amounts of marijuana, over the limits and so forth. So it's like, he kind of describes, like, you would think that the lawyer would sit there with a wheelbarrow and just clean out this guy's house. But
that's smart.
It almost seemed like they knew what's coming and they just didn't care. You know what I mean?
You know what? They'll start to care now. When they start to think that they're above the law, they can beat the law, that's the beginning of their downfall.
And they had songs like that.
Yeah.
Saying there's a song called Take It to Trial, which is now part of the actual case. And they're talking about the judge. That's now part of the case. It's really one of the ugliest situations that I've seen in the hip hop world, including just considering how big the various people are in the situation. And, when I talked to the journalist about this, he thinks, no one's really going to walk away from this. That people are going to be facing 50
those that
years.
cooperate will walk away with less time, obviously. But you're right, nobody will walk away from it. I mean, if what you're describing, they've got all of this. I mean, look, these cases are so tough to beat. So tough. And if you're just giving them evidence, look, once you think that you're invincible or that you can take care of anything or beat, I took a plea after I beat them 5 times. And Vlad, the witness that was testifying against me in the gasoline case testified against me in the Giuliani case, and we destroyed him. Destroyed him. That's the only reason the government would deal with me. They were afraid because I already beat their main witness. But I might have gotten convicted. And if I beat that one, they were coming at me again. And when you lose, you're going away forever. So that's why I cut my losses. I had leverage over the government because I beat their major witness in the Giuliani case. And that's when I said, you know what? I got to try to cut my losses here. There's no way if I stay in this life, I'm going to jail at some point. There's no doubt. So let me try to cut my losses now. And that was the whole reasoning behind it. When these guys think that they're invincible, Gotti and all of that, you're out of your mind.
Right, because Gotti was actually buying jury members.
Yeah, well, listen.
He bought. I mean, there was one guy that he paid off $60,000 to.
Yeah.
Who ended up getting caught and going to prison afterwards. Yeah, no, it was just recently that I really figured out how serious witness tampering as a whole is. Yeah. Like, if you try to talk to a witness before your trial, you're going to get a whole set of new charges against you, like hellacious charges where you're facing like 20, 30 years. Because that's essentially the basis of the legal system when you try to break that down. I mean, how often was witness tampering happening in the mafia?
Well, you always try. Yeah, I mean, when you're pooling the jury, or who has a relative who may know him or whatever, you're always seeing that if you can get to somebody quietly, obviously. Like I said, we had 750 guys, so maybe you would know somebody in the jury, or somebody would know that, somebody would know somebody in the jury. So you're always looking for that. But, rarely does it happen. It doesn't happen a lot.
Well, another interesting case that's happening out of Florida right now, there's a rapper named K-Su who's being charged with a murder. And his father is facing a accessory after the fact charge. You familiar with this?
No.
Let me look this up.
Not familiar with the case.
Well, no, but a murder accessory after the fact.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know the charge.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. So essentially what an accessory after the fact means is that if someone approaches you and said, I just killed somebody.
Yeah. And you help them.
And you help them escape, you help them cover it up or whatever else, you could potentially catch a murder.
Sure.
After the case accessory charge, which I think his father is actually facing 30 years over. Mm-hmm. So now his father is actually going to be testifying against his son. And everyone's sort of in an uproar over this, but I mean, what would you really do? And this hits close to home with you, with your brother and your father, and you know what I'm saying? Like you see, I mean, your brother testified against your father and put him back to, in prison. Yes. So it's not exactly that, but it's somewhat similar. When you look at a case like that, here is a father who's minding his own business. His son goes and approaches him. And the father's basically saying how the son is not saying anything. Mm-hmm. He's not helping and say, no, my dad had nothing to do with it. He's just remaining silent and letting his dad get hit with all these charges. So now he feels like he's being forced to have to cooperate against his own son. When you look at a situation like that, what do you think?
Terrible. I mean, listen, when you turn family members against one another, look, we were devastated when my brother did what he did. Devastated. But, we also knew he had a severe drug problem.
Yeah.
But it was still devastating. My father said to me, what do I got to live for anymore? My own son is doing this. I got nothing to live for. And he was that upset about it. But, listen, I've had discussion. I didn't talk to my brother for many, many years. I've had discussion. We've since reunited. I love my brother. He's my kid brother. And I knew the situations he was dealing with. But my brother will tell you, out of all the kids in our family was devastated. Devastated. And he said, I don't know how you survive, Michael. You're the only one who seems to have survived and function. I can't answer that. I don't know. But when you listen to my brother and you hear his side of the story, it was devastating what he had emotionally in his head. He blamed my father for certain things, yet he loved my father. And I listened to him afterwards, things that I never considered before. I'm not saying he was right to do what he did, because I said to him, John, I don't like what you did with Dad. You just don't do that, no matter what. You didn't have to do that. But, look, when laws start turning family against, my dad once told me, I'll never forget from the time I was a kid, he said, you never want to be a cop, Michael. And I said, why? He said, because a cop takes an oath to lock up his own parents if they break the law. He said, could you ever do that? I said, no. That was like a justification. You never become a cop.
Okay, you have how many kids?
I have 7.
7 kids.
7 kids.
Okay. One of your kids shows up right after this interview and said, Dad, I just killed somebody. Can you help me? Can you help me out? I'm not built for this. I have no idea what just happened. It was a fight that got out of hand. I just killed someone. What would you do?
My instinct would help my son.
Okay. You get caught. Now you're facing accessory to murder after the fact. 71 years old. Whatever you get, you're going to die in prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with all your, your
I'm going to get everything.
Yeah. with all the past, your past criminal record and so forth, there is no slap on the wrist. What would you do?
I fight the case.
Would you testify against your son?
No. I would not testify against my son. Absolutely not.
He put you in this fucked up situation which you had nothing to do with, and he's not helping you out. He's not saying my dad got nothing to do with it. You would stand tall and take.
I could not testify against my son. I just couldn't. Especially if he came to me the way he did. I knew he was weak. He couldn't help himself. I couldn't do it.
Well, because technically the way the law works, aren't you required at that point to turn him into the police? That's how you get out of that, right?
Yeah. I
right?
mean,
am I right though?
I don't know if you're required to do it. You don't have to become law enforcement. But once you get, no, I don't believe you're required. Again, I'm not, I want to be specific, but I don't think you're required to turn him in. It's just like if witnesses on the street happen to see somebody murder somebody, they don't have to leave and go to the police department and say, hey, I just saw this. Now, if they're questioned, they can't lie. They have to tell the truth. So if I was questioned and I lied for my son, well, then I'd be in trouble.
Now you're accessory after the fact.
Yeah, I'd be in trouble. But no, you don't have an obligation to go and report him. No, I don't believe so anyway.
It's a very ugly situation.
It's terrible. I mean, it's horrible.
It's
an
ugly situation.
Listen.
I mean, I don't know what I would do. I mean, at the end of the day, though, you see these situations. Like, for example, there's this, famous rapper named DJ Quick. His son is now up on murder charges. Another basketball player named Ray Alston, who I interviewed, aka Skip to My Lou. His son is in jail right now for murder. I mean, I looked at the case and it was like, after the murder, he ended up texting somebody, said that we just killed someone. And the guy's like, yo, erase this text. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's really like kind of amateur hour type things that happen, because clearly they can get the text message back. But you see these situations where these famous parents, their kids end up getting in the worst trouble they possibly can. These are both juniors also. Like in both cases, they're named after their dad.
Yeah.
It's, but I don't know. At the end of the day, it is your child, but they're going to go and make their own decisions. And to drag your parents down, especially later in life, like I thought it was completely fucked up that your dad had to go to prison at what age?
93.
93.
It's terrible.
The fact that he got out is really somewhat of a miracle.
Yeah.
When you think about
100%.
it. Because for all intents and purposes, everyone assumed that he would, just because of his age alone, that he would pass away in prison.
That's what we thought. Yeah.
And he got out at what age?
100.
100.
He was 100. 2017. Oldest inmate in the system. But yeah, it was horrible. Look, I was with my dad throughout the trial, and he didn't even care what was going on. He fell asleep. He said, what am I going to do at this point? It was so upsetting to him. that his son was up there testifying against him, it was hard. And me and my brother, I'm watching him and I'm like, wow. Because look, when I sat down, when the feds talked to me about that, I said, don't even ask me about my father or my brother or anybody. I don't want to hear about it. You want to talk about things that I did, talk about the gas business. We all know it already. No problem. But don't ask me about my dad. And they respected that. Totally respected it. So, because I would have never said anything about my father. Just couldn't do it. And I could never do it with my kids either.
Well, Giuliani, I think in that same interview that you and Sammy did, he basically said that the Italian mafia is no longer the biggest organized crime organization in America. He said the Russians and, whoever else have really kind of surpassed in terms of just the amount of work that they put in. Back in the day they were, but in 2022, not so much anymore. Would you agree with that?
Well, let me, in my opinion, I think he's right on because, I'll tell you this, they took so much power away from us and they put so many guys away. But I'll give you a little evidence. Prior to back in the 80s, you could not read the New York Post or the Daily News without a mob story every single day about somebody in one of the families doing something. I read the New York paper every morning. Maybe every 6 months you'll read something about somebody.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing anything. A lot of the control that we had has been taken away. Now, is it gone? No. And I don't think it'll disappear in my lifetime, but it doesn't have anywhere near the juice that it once had. Now, again, I don't sell them short. I'm not saying they're incapable. Maybe they really got smart and they're doing things undercover because you don't hear about too many indictments anymore every once in a while, which is a good thing for them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they've gone down in actual numbers. I've heard that, numbers are fairly accurate, that they still got, beef in the families. But maybe, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe they just got smart and said, you know what, we're going to keep quiet.
Well, isn't it just much harder to do crimes these days?
Absolutely.
Just period. On any level, between cell phones, cameras on every corner, they could triangulate, a position. If anyone has a phone of any sort, they could figure out where you were. You could say, oh, I was home with, watching TV. Well, really, your phone doesn't show that. So
absolutely.
That alibi, you could use that alibi in the 80s.
Absolutely.
Right? And if your girlfriend said, yeah, he was home with me, that's it. Now they can figure out where your cell phone was. They could check the cameras on the bridges and the streets. Like, okay, no, your car was not here and so 100%. Forth. You throw in RICO laws on top of that. And I think that there is, I feel like more people just cooperate these days.
No doubt.
This whole idea of the code of silence and so forth is just not there as much. Now you have rappers like Tekashi 6ix9ine that go and cooperate and put all their friends behind prison for over 100 years and come out and have a musical career still.
No doubt.
Which we all thought was never going to happen. But here we are in 2022. I mean, he's not as big as he was, but he still does concerts and kids love him.
No, it's not like, 30 years ago, if you were a rat, it's the worst thing in the world. Today, you're a YouTube star, on levels. So people don't care about that anymore to a great degree. I'm not saying everybody, but to a great degree. Listen, the government has won. They won in a lot of ways. There's no question. And, it's amazing what's flipped now. You can go steal $950 worth of merchandise and get a slap on the wrist, no bail, go home the next day and commit another crime. But if you're part of an organized criminal group, they're coming after you, and you're not getting those kind of breaks unless you cooperate. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were very, very upset that Sammy the Bull admitted to 19 murders and got less than 5 years. In fact, when he got sentenced, he had been in prison already for 4 years, going through and testifying in trials, that he had less than a year to serve when he got out. The plea deal was 20 years, but based on the cooperation, they trimmed it down to 5. So it was almost time served in a way. Now he got busted again later on, and they gave him the 20 years for that. Almost like an OJ situation. Like, okay, we didn't get you for this one. We're going to get you for this one. But essentially, it seems that if you don't profusely cooperate, they're going to throw the book at you. You know,
True.
and I remember I interviewed Jordan Belfort, you know, the Wolf of Wall Street. And I mean, he was responsible for like hundreds of millions of dollars in losses and so forth. He got a few years in a country club jail. Yeah. And what he said was interesting. He goes, I don't know how the hip hop or the mafia world works, but in Wall Street, you get busted and everyone cooperates. It's just established that you're going to fully cooperate with the government and all your co-defendants are going to do the exact same thing and everyone's going to get a slap on the wrist. And essentially, you get a few years, you can come out and you could, live your life. But
and he's proof of that.
He's proof of that. Yeah. Right.
He's right now, I think he's in England because I'm doing a speaking tour there. And I just got interviewed there by a fellow by the name of Brian Rose, who ran for mayor of London. Nice guy, really nice guy. And he interviewed Jordan. I think it came out today.
Right.
So
I interviewed.
We're all doing the rounds.
I know. You got a little mad at me during the interview.
Did he?
Yeah, because I kind of, a couple of times I asked him if he was bad about what he did. And he's like, didn't I fucking answer this already? Like, it was a little viral moment we had. I'm like, yeah, you did. Sometimes I do try to ask the same question in different ways multiple times. Do you feel like you're completely innocent, you did nothing wrong and you were targeted? Or can you honestly say, I did certain things that made these people lose millions of dollars and I feel bad about that?
What did I just say to you a second ago?
You said that the money's not going back to any actual investors.
Before that. Didn't I just say that I deserve to go to jail like 3 times already and that I made mistakes? Did I just say that?
Yes.
Okay. So why you ask me the same question again?
Okay. Fair enough. It was just a different angle.
It's not that it was the same angle. You're trying to push a narrative that's ridiculous, okay? Of course I made mistakes and broke the law. I said the first time I was guilty and Tommy wasn't. That was the difference in the two of us, okay?
He seems like a character.
He is.
People have asked me to, interview him on a sit down, but maybe we'll see.
We'll see. Final question. On my other interviews, you've always worn a suit. So I didn't realize you have tattoos on your arms. Can we show those for the camera?
Yeah. They're both from the book of Proverbs.
Mm-hmm.
These were the 2 verses that had the most impact on me the night I got put in a hole when I violated my parole. And it started my faith journey that night. And so I tattooed it to myself because every morning when I'm combing my hair and brushing my teeth, I remind myself just to follow the right path.
And what do those 2 proverbs actually mean?
Proverbs 16:7 says, when a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, even his enemies are at peace with him. Now, the first night I read that, I had nothing but enemies. And that kind of started me, thinking a little bit, because I knew my ways weren't pleasing to the Lord. And it was almost as if, God spoke to me and said, well, if they are, I'll take care of your enemies. And kind of worked out for me, number one. And this one is Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Kind of like my story, a lot straighter today than I was way back when. So I just, I keep them as a reminder because, Vlad, there's so many distractions that we have on a daily basis in life. And I'd say 2 things. I found out in this world, this is the message I give to young people. We are who we hang out with. You hang with the wrong crowd, chances are you're going to go the wrong way. They're going to influence you in the wrong way. When I was in the mob, my oath, right? I followed that path. I tell them that all the time, and I tell them the path you follow is going to be who you are accountable to in life. Again, I was accountable to my oath and to my boss, and I was a criminal. Now I'm accountable to God, my family, people that care about me, want me to do the right thing, and I'm on a much better path. So, and you got to remind yourself of these things. It's not just taken for granted. And like I said, so many distractions in life. If you don't stay to your core, you could easily drift off.
There you have it. That's how we're going to end it. Michael Franzese, always a pleasure whenever you come on. Until
Same
next
here.
time. Peace.
We'll do it again, Vlad.
We will.
Okay. Thank you.